Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you to the March 2023 webinar hosted by the Community College Association of Texas Trustees. My name is Jay Barrett, and I'm the chairman of the board of directors of CCATT. We are glad you could join us today for a discussion on data-informed governance for community colleges. The duties of trusteeship require familiarity with the populations in your service area and knowledge of how well your college is able to respond to regional workforce needs. Our panel discussion today will focus on how board members can make the best use of critical analyses related to community demographics and student success. So that's who I am. Slide 2, Nicole. We are honored to have 3 experienced leaders with us this afternoon to share their perspective, and it's my privilege to welcome them today and introduce them. First of all, Dr. Jenna Cullinane-Hege has served as Vice Chancellor of Institutional Research and Analytics at Austin Community College since 2020. Previously, Cullinane-Hege served as Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Strategic Planning at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. She also worked at the University of Texas at Austin as Higher Ed Policy Lead for the Charles A. Dana Center and as an Assistant Professor of Practice, where she taught Higher Ed Economics and Finance in the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy. Cullinane-Hege earned her PhD from the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas in 2014. She also has a master's in public affairs from the same institution, as well as a bachelor's in legal studies from UC Berkeley. Dr. Cullinane-Hege, welcome.
Thank you.
Susan Dawson is a Texas entrepreneur and civic leader. As a successful business entrepreneur turned social entrepreneur, Dawson has led multiple technology firms. She founded and leads E3 Alliance, which has been recognized across the country for its groundbreaking work in systemic change for education. Dawson has served the community as chair of the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce, as well as board chair of an executive member of Austin Area Research Organization, Leadership Austin, Children's Optimal Health, Workforce Solutions, American Youth Works, and Austin Partners in Education. Dawson has a BS cum laude from Princeton University and an MBA with highest honors from UT Austin McCombs School of Business. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate being here.
You make me seem like I don't work very hard with all the work you've done. Gary Johnson has been a member of the Odessa College Board of Trustees since 1990 and currently serves as the board chair. A former Odessa College student himself, he holds a degree in business management from Texas Tech University. In addition to co-owning his family business, Johnson Brothers Oil and Company, he acted as chair of the Ector County Republican Party for 17 years. Johnson currently serves as board member of the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone for the City of Odessa and is a founding member of the Odessa College Foundation Board. Welcome, Gary.
Glad to be here.
So I'm going to be posing several questions throughout this session. And again, we have a chat open. So if you have any questions as an audience member, please make sure to put those in the chat. We will go ahead and begin with our first question. Panelists, are you ready?
Yes.
Sounds like a game show host, sorry. What does data-informed governance mean to you, and why is it important?
Well, I'll start that one not representing a community college, because as we all know, those who are leaders, both within staff and within trustees of community colleges, have a responsibility to look at the strategic view, to look for the long-term of where the college is going and what the opportunities are and what the changes are that need to be made in order to achieve the strategic plan and the success for the institution. And very often that is embedded in the data that is not day-to-day operations data, is not reacting to something that happened last week or last month, but really something that predicts where the college needs to go in the future. And so what I hope that we are all able to impart today is how to access and build the capability and the culture of using that data for long-term decision-making in the best interest of students and the community.
Yeah, I'll follow that up. I think it's important that we accumulate data from many different sources, whether it's your community partners, whether it's it might be your hospitals, your area school districts, workforce board, all those entities play a part in the data we receive. Now, I think it's important that you have a constant and continuing communication and collaboration with all those partners, because they're the ones that are out in the world saying, this is what we need, this is what's important to us. And then I think that as from a community college standpoint, it's our responsibility to set those policies and find those budgets to educate and train to those particular needs. All the needs are not the same. It's not a one size fits all. The Permian Basin has different needs than, say, Amarillo or Houston, those type of things. So I think it's important to be in touch with your community partners and say, where can we help? And then it's our obligation to take that data, to use that data, and then implement the programs, because we want to educate, but we also want our students to be successful, and then go from being successful to receiving certificates and degrees, and then they move out into the workforce. And we all know it's proven fact that somebody who has a certificate degree from a community college over a lifetime is going to make a lot more money than they do if they just graduate of high school. I know it's difficult at times for high school students to say, well, I can go out to work right now. Why should I finish school? I'm going to work and make lots of money. But they don't understand that 10, 15 years down the road, they would have made a lot more money if they had that certification. So I think that's important. And I think, and just to wrap that up, I think it said that data should not be used strictly for information, but it must be used to increase student success, retention, and completion, and which leads to degrees and certificates. I think sometimes we take data and say, okay, yeah, we got all this data, but it's important to use that to make sure that we're being successful for our students.
Yeah, I'll echo both the focus on kind of the strategic level of data for board operations and policy setting that both Susan and Gary have highlighted here. And also that really central view on student success. So being a data-informed board really means that you're laser focused on student outcomes, as well as some of the broader community, facilities, budget, high-level issues that trustee members are asked to take on and be responsible for. And I think some of the ways that you as board members can really help support and foster a data-informed college and a data-informed board is, one, thinking about resources for data, right? So investing in the professionals that can help elevate the data game at your institution. Also, some of the resources that are needed for systems like your ERP system or other data tracking systems. Clean data is really, really important, and modern tools can help make sure that we have clean, reliable, usable data, so that we're able to share from an institutional administrator perspective with the board the best information. Also, I'll note that modern tools help connect data across multiple systems. So all of your colleges have learning management systems, ERP administrative systems, you might have advising tools, all kinds of places where data is stored. And so we're starting to understand that we really want a full picture, a broad view of the student experience, and you need to be able to move across those systems. Boards can also really help set the tone on culture, that data is expected when a problem arises or when there's something on the horizon, that we really want to understand that from a data perspective. And that might be quantitative, but that might also be qualitative, but that we're not relying on our hunches, or I heard one person in the community tell me this. How do we really understand this deeply across, the broad student experience or largely in the community? I also think boards can help utilize data to have a culture of accountability where we set clear targets and we're actually tracking and monitoring towards those targets once that vision has been laid out. And finally, just that those aims are measurable and clear for the community. It can be a really nice, visible and transparent way of showing what you're contributing to the community and how you're gauging your progress going forward. So those are some of the ways I see kind of a data informed kind of best practice around governance.
That's outstanding. I love the fact we're talking about culture, because culture is uber important in making it just the norm for data to be utilized. How do we get there? If our colleges, our boards aren't quite there yet, how do we make it a part of our culture to use data?
I think part of that, Jay, is just modeling it. There is a huge difference between, well, back when I was in school, or my daughter or son's experience versus, or who walked into my office last week and complained the most, right? Versus how do we take that quantitative data, and as Jenna said, the qualitative data, and model taking advantage of that and using that to inform how do we think, how do we make decisions, how do we set policies.
Yeah, excellent.
Jay, I think from a trustee standpoint, I think it's important for the trustees to really demand data and because we ask for results and then we we'll get the results. It's okay. Now give us the data to how you achieve those results.
Yeah.
And then we can take that information and do what we need to do as trustees as far as finding the resources or making the changes. So I think it's important from the trustee standpoint to say, you know, yeah, we see the results, but how did you get there? And give me the data to prove that we're making the results that we have.
Right. Right.
And I would just add that one thing that we have done at Austin Community College is we have a standing agenda item that's a student success data item. And so every month we're hitting either, I'll talk a little bit about this later, either kind of a broad summary of our high level goals, or it might be a specific issue. We spent a lot of time recently talking about students who have caregiving needs. And so what do we know about that population? So we might do a special focus on topics of interest as they come up. So that is one way we kind of get into the routine. Every month we are looking at some kind of student data.
Yeah, we do that as well.
Yeah, that's very, very important. I think culture can be defined as sort of what we talk about when we're inside the room, and also what we talk about to people outside the room. And I think both of those are equally important. And when you're sharing that data every board meeting, it just becomes normalized. I learned a long time ago something that Gary had mentioned about being data rich and information poor. You know, we were all celebrating data, but then what do you do with it? It's that information, what you use it for to prove where you're going or where you need to go. So all of this is just really, really encouraging to see how important being a data informed board is. Gary, this is going to be kind of for you, but then we'll have our other panelists pitch in a little bit. I'm going to ask you a question about Odessa College. Odessa College was a top 10 finalist in 2017 and 2019 for the Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence, and has been recognized by Achieving the Dream as a Leader College of Distinction since 2021. Can you please tell us about the leadership approach of the Odessa College Board of Trustees that has enabled these great achievements, because the rest of us would like to follow?
Okay. We were also an Aspen top 10 in 2021 as well. So
Well, I'm sorry I left that out because that's very important.
Right. And then I don't know if people were aware, but in 2017, we were awarded the Leo Meyer Austin Award as well.
Yeah.
So, and I think that basically goes from the standpoint of board leadership in the area of we set high expectations, and then we provide the resources to achieve those expectations. And I think that the important thing is that we really encourage the administration to reach those, but to do better than that. In other words, I think our saying is that at Odessa College is, we can do better, and how do we do better? But then once we do that, the next thing is, what's next? What do we do next? So I think, you always heard a saying, if you're happy where you are, then you're going backwards. You need to constantly be moving forward. And I think that a lot of things that we're not afraid to try things. If they don't work, you change them. But if you're content with just saying, well, we've always done it this way, then that's not accomplished. So I think part of that was the fact that we were willing to reach out and say, what can we do? Our completion rates, our retention rates, all those things have improved. And I think that the whole key was that several years ago, we initiated 8-week semesters. And people said, you don't do that. You don't. And people don't realize that in an 8-week semester, you take as many courses as you do in a 16-week semester, because you have half of what you took in 8, the next 8. Students do better. They learn more. And I think it also in the community college that, we have, as you all know, life happens. You have students that things happen. Well, if things happen in a 16-week semester, then you've lost them. If things happen in the same time over 8-week semester, then get them back in the next 8 weeks. So now our goal is to constantly, we want to retain students because we want to be successful. And I think that now a lot of schools have gone to 8-week semesters, and we found it's been very successful. Kids retain more. I think as life goes through, like I said, as life happens, then during 8 weeks, the college day will step in and say, well, we can help you with that. Whether it's a child care, whether it's food insecurities, those type of things, we have those things available. So, our goal is we want everybody to be successful, to achieve. And like I said, and as I mentioned earlier, that years from now, hopefully they'll look back and say, that I made the right decision because I'm much better off than I would have been without making these steps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Something I took away from what you said earlier, doing better. I wrote down do better all the time, because you've got to just continue that. And that's encouraging. And I remember several years ago at Amarillo College, we looked at the data that Odessa College was producing with their 8 weeks courses. And that was a big reason why we did that. And let me tell you, it is absolutely effective. So we thank you for leading the way there at Odessa College for a lot of us.
Well, yeah, I was just saying, Jay, let me add one thing. I think it's important to realize that community colleges, it's not like we're all separate little entities. If something works well somewhere, why not share that? Because we're all in the same goal of we're trying to really increase the education ability of folks. We want people to be successful. So, that's not something for just one person to hold. Say, well, look what we've done. No, it's something that we all need to, if it works somewhere, let's all adopt that and move, because we're all doing the same mission.
Yeah, we have 50 colleges all with the same purpose.
Right.
in our own unique ways.
Right.
Next question I have for our panelists is maybe directed at Susan, but then we also have Jenna, I know, who has some slides on this question. With E3 Alliance as a regional education backbone, providing data to drive decision-making in Central Texas, what do you think is important to make available to trustees and community college leaders so they can make the best decisions?
Thank you, Jay. Well, part of that is the data that we've been talking about, but part of that also is the statistics and the ways that we set a long-term vision of ourselves. Gary was talking about how it's easy to see, especially for our younger students, decisions that are made based on what's happening today without thinking about what's happening 5 years, 10 years into my future. One of the ways that we try to create that inspiration of what's happening in the future is through this statistic, which is targeted at Central Texas, but certainly is similar to what you would see across the state, which is that those young adults who don't have some post-secondary credential, it could be a 4-year degree, it could be a 2-year degree, it could be an industry-based certification, but if you don't have some post-secondary credential within 6 years of leaving high school, you have just a 12% chance of earning a living wage. So for those who are saying college is not for everyone, there are lots of other ways to be able to prove yourself. Really, there may be many, many pathways, but without some credential beyond high school that has value in the marketplace, we're writing off almost all of our students to never having a living wage. So how do we do that? How do we go behind that and understand what are the opportunities for students to get that? And more, we're seeing this blending of high school and post-secondary, where students are taking many, many career tech ed courses. Sometimes they might be just experimenting in cosmetology, but then also health sciences and transportation and others. But other times they are really concentrating in areas, which is where you see the benefit of being able to prepare for a post-secondary credential. More and more students are taking dual credit courses in high school. Unfortunately, not the students who we most care about. We really want to see those students who have opportunities to take classes for free or almost for free and prove to themselves that they can do so in high school. And we really need to expand those who are taking those dual credit classes in high school, but also international baccalaureate, those who are in early college, high schools, a variety of ways. You can see these Central Texas statistics, but across the state that we're really trying to blend those opportunities. And then one of the things that we're doing here at E3 Alliance is sharing with our partners like Austin Community College, what of those are not just correlated, but are actually predictors of later success, particularly in 2-year post-secondary credentials. How many dual credit classes does a student have to take? Of what type? How does one have to concentrate on career tech ed classes, and how much difference does that make? Advanced placement. What are the various types of opportunities, and how do they predict that we'll see that later success that lasts? And I'll go into a little more detail later, but overall, one of the things that trustees should be looking at is what are those predictors of success that we can impact in our communities with our partners so that students have those greater opportunities.
Awesome. 12% chance. That's not good. That's not good
Not
odds.
good.
Not good whatsoever, which only highlights the importance of the work that we're doing. I want to go on to question 4. And this may pertain a lot to Jenna, but others as well. Can you share your perspective on collaborative, data-informed governance and ways for a college to understand their role in achieving the statewide strategic plan called Building a Talent Strong Texas?
Sure. So I was actually working at the coordinating board when the 60 by 30 text plan came out, and now the new Building a Talent Strong Texas is kind of an evolution of that plan, but with lots of kind of similar DNA. So the new plan is even more focused on completions. There, in the past, the state was aiming for 550,000 completions overall, and in the new Building a Talent Strong Texans, their plan, there is a new word, kind of a new term called credentials of value. So still aiming for 550,000, but credentials of value. So what this term is subtle, but really important to understand. And so what it's saying is that not all credentials are created equally, that we actually care about the workforce and employment outcomes of students on the back end. And so a coordinating board has undertaken some analysis that is beginning to roll out now around how successful are students after they complete at our colleges in various programs, and are they really better off? And that's better off compared to someone who was just in high school. So 10 years later, compared to someone who only finished a high school diploma versus completed one of our programs, are they better off economically speaking, right? So this is a big shift in how we think about, community colleges have gone through a wave where we were really centrally access focused, and that was, we were optimizing on how do we help as many students as possible access higher education. In the last decade, we've shifted to completions. We want to make sure not only do students come through the front door, but they actually need to complete something with us. And now we're being pushed into this next, kind of third wave, which is we're not only responsible for what happens when they're with us, but really launching them into their career and employment after they're with us. So a couple of things that I would say as you think about your college and potential alignment opportunities. One is, that second wave around completion. And so really making sure that your completion goals are aligned to the state plan. So I would say overall completions is one area where Austin Community College and many others are focused. And I know we've got a question coming up about the new finance system. So that's going to put even more pressure around completions. So spending time on that, starting to understand some of the differences between a graduation rate and total completions. There's some subtlety there, and we could get down in the weeds. I don't think we want to go there today, but those are the kinds of things that I think you want to be aware of in this effort to align with the state strategic plan. We're really focused on total completions, regardless of where a student started, whether they were a high school student or someone who transferred into you later on. Any completion is really important. And then that's that third wave piece of also wanting to be aware and more sophisticated in use of labor market data, either using state resources to understand through the Texas Workforce Commission or the coordinating board, or information like MZ, Lightcast, Burning Glass, if you're familiar with those, are another way to kind of think about what are the opportunities for your students after they leave. So I did want to show a resource here that we use just to show some of that alignment between the Austin Community College strategic plan and the state strategic plan. So hopefully what you're seeing here is a website. So this is where you can find the ACC strategic plan. And from this, when I think about a board level view, you can of course get to the plan, and we've got 4 big goals: equity and access, persistence and engagement, completion and transition to employment and transfer. But we have a set of dashboards here. So if you click on this, it will take you to our dashboards, and you can see those first 3 goals all have a quantitative measurable goal associated with them. So reaching 85,000 student enrollment, that's our undergraduate credit students, our continuing education students, and our adult ed students by 2030. So another just an alignment. When we were talking 60 by 30, we were thinking about where do we want to be by 2030 as a regional community college contributing to the overall statewide goals. We've got our persistence goal here, 58% for that fall 2029 cohort that'll be there in 2030, and then our credential completions. So I'm going to show you just one more. If I dig in here to the credential completions, you can see we of course are looking overall, but we really have a strong equity lens, and that's something that's really important to building a Talent Strong Texan. That plan as well is there's a strong equity focus in that plan that says we need to support all of our students, and the future of Texas really depends on us being very thoughtful about what are the needs that students have and how do we meet them where they are to help them be successful. So race, ethnicity, and also by gender options here. So just give you a quick look. This is great, I think, board level data to say overall, where are we in terms of meeting our goals to where we want to be at the 15,000. You can see we're getting darn close at 14 and change here. But then also by race, ethnicity, we can take a look at, you can see big shifts in our demographics in terms of our completers over time. We've got many more Hispanic completers over this period of time. And then we've got specific targets for each of our large race ethnicity groups. So this is updated annually when we have a new cycle. But this is a way that our board members can really see how close are we to being on track to those big targets that they helped us set. So I'll pause there.
Well, I'm going to say not only board members, but the public, because this is open information, right?
That's
so
right.
what does that do when we share this data like that? What effect does that have?
So I think it's so important. We of course have lots of internal data that we don't share, but this is saying to our community, and I'll talk a little bit later about how we recently went out for a bond, is that we are transparent, we're clear about our goals, and we're working really hard and we're making lots of improvements. We're not exactly where we want to be. We've got ways to go. I look at Odessa and Amarillo, and you guys have some very darn impressive success rates, and we aim to follow you. So I think what this is saying is that, you know, we are a public entity, we serve our community, and we want it to be clear how we're serving our community. And so I think when we talked a little bit before about a data-informed culture, you have to put your money where your mouth is and be willing to share and be transparent in that way.
I applaud y'all's efforts. I mean, they're great putting it out there, being transparent, just laying it out there. It's very courageous, because sometimes, you know, the data doesn't indicate what you want it to, but that's just facing the cold hard facts and not hiding from reality and actually meeting it head on. Other panelists on this same question.
I would like to emphasize that Gary and Jenna have both talked about zeroing in on what the students need and the students that are represented. And I know that across the state, this has been especially true coming out of the pandemic. We've seen enrollment continue to drop. We've seen struggles that students have with things like food insecurity and family issues that show up in the data that we see with them at the community college. But we also talked about how to meet the needs of the community. So I'm not going to share this because I'm not going to share this in detail because we have so much data behind this. But one of the things that we look at is very specifically, what are the kinds of college enrollment and completion that we see that are predictors related to those areas of need in our communities, health science degrees and industry-based credentials in health science, business, agriculture. So you can see some of the predictors that we have in particular areas of need, and we drive those down in even more detail, where, for instance, you can look at two of the areas across the state, and of course, Odessa, Midland, the Gulf Coast are going to have different needs, but across the state, we continue to see huge needs in health science and in STEM degrees. Here we're looking at the 2-year achievement at Austin Community College of our own graduates here who are preparing for those critical health science and STEM credentials, both the raw numbers of students as well as what they took that predicted them to be able to achieve those particular kinds of outcomes. And then we look even further, and this is going to be an eye chart, so please don't feel like you have to go into this all today, but we look by all students, those from low-income households, are females and males, different ethnicities and races, and who are overrepresented versus underrepresented. For instance, you can see in this bold area within health sciences, we had over 2,000 students in Central Texas, but our low-income students were pretty much matched. Our females were highly represented in health sciences, where some of the other areas were not as high represented. And you can see in STEM, our low income and our female populations were disproportionately underrepresented in those critical STEM fields. So we look at different populations of students and where the needs are, and are we preparing those students to meet those needs. And then the last thing, if you really want to go down, is to look at some of the ways that we partner. So these are some data that you could find that we share public levels, we share regional levels on our website, but we also share with our particular partners where we're looking at individual high schools and student populations that we can target. So across this horizontal axis are high schools across the Central Texas region, and what is the percent of students from low-income households represented in those high schools? And then what are we seeing? We happen to be looking at those students from low-income families who are enrolling in post-secondary, but we can look at by individual race, ethnicity, gender, and we can work with Austin Community College to partner with particular high schools who have high representation of those students who we most want to target. And how is that we target resources and supports for those high schools to help those students gain the credentials that will best serve them here in our own community. So just some examples of how we're trying to change local policy and partnerships to meet the needs of students in our region for the jobs in our region.
Awesome. I love all this discussion about blurring the lines between secondary and post-secondary, and then really blurring the lines between community colleges and where they go after completion, because we're all in this together. We're all, the goal is the same. We're trying to get people through to give them really above a living wage, right? We're trying to get them to be successful in the areas that they want to be successful in.
Jay,
Gary, go ahead.
Just one comment. For years, we've always heard the K through 12 is education. You know, that needs to change. Education at the minimum ought to be K through 14 or wherever you know, at least at the minimum a community, 2 years of community college, because the difference is we've talked about between a K-12 and 2 years of community college in wage earning and quality of life is just tremendous. So I think that's, you know, that's the emphasis, you know, we really need to push.
I'd absolutely agree with that, Gary. As a high school principal of a CTE campus myself, I call it pre-post-secondary work that we're doing, because we're really tying that knot between what we're doing in Amarillo ISD and what we're doing at Amarillo College. We're one system. And if you look at the history of community colleges were born out of the independent school district systems. We didn't even have our own board in Amarillo until 1958. So it's almost like we went away, but now we're coming back and seeing the benefit of working together, and that is through data. Let's go on, and I wanted to make sure we answered this question, and we may have, but it's, will you share an example of how data can be used to identify a necessary policy change for the Board of Trustees to improve student support? Have we looked at that specifically?
Let me just give one comment I can on that.
Okay.
I think one of the things that we looked at is that at Odessa College, that, you know, we have, they used to be called advisors. We call them success coaches now,
Yes.
but
Yes.
all of our students have a success coach, you know, and once they attend, then, you know, we have a coach for them, and that coach can say, you know, help them, guide them, because a lot of them say, well, I think I want to go into the medical field. Well, then you advise them and say, well, do you have the science background? Are you interested in this? And then you might move into a different area in the medical field. So I think it's real important. So that's one of the things that we did, is we make sure we had the finances, and we've increased our amount of success coaches. So, you know, they don't have to have 100 students, and maybe have 15 or 20. We're trying to get more and more, but we want every student to have a coach to coach them, and not only in their studies, but also we coach them in, you know, in areas of, say, you know, you need help. And some of them might say, well, I need childcare. We can help them do that. You know, so, well, you know, I missed a meal yesterday, you know, because I had to go pay a bill, you know, and that's things that we need to be aware about. And, you know, and I think through the success coaching, we've been able to find some of those things out. And I think has helped students to be successful.
Yeah. You know, as a parent, when you have students go to community college, it's like, here, welcome. Let's let us help you find and be connected to, and here's what do you want to do? Here are the classes to take. When my own children went on to university, it was like, well, here you go, good luck. And
Right.
it was very much like that. It felt like that as a parent, but
You know, and in community colleges, most of us have a lot of first time in their family
Yes.
students. I mean, it's a whole new world to them. And I think
Right.
it's important that we reach out and they have that connection to where we are and what they're doing. So,
yes. Let's go on to this other question about how data can be used to improve a college's ability to address regional workforce needs. What do we see with data and the regional workforce needs? How can we improve that? ability.
I
to
would
do.
love to call out ACC on that, because I think Jenna can represent how, by working together to use data, the Board of Trustees at Austin Community College, and I know this has happened in other parts of the state as well,
Mhm.
have been able to make decisions about policies and resources and where they go, so that they really do achieve what the community needs and what the students need. Can
Mhm.
you provide some examples, Jenna?
Yes, I'd love to. This is probably the area that I'm most passionate about in my work right now, is the connection to our workforce data and how we're using labor market information. So let me show you a couple of things here. So the first example that I would give around this is related to, in the fall, we went out for a bond, and the board was deciding there was a $500 million package and there's a $800 million package that we were considering. And they had different kind of menus of things. So one of the things that we did, and I will say, honestly, I did not feel, I wasn't convinced, do we need the 500,000? Do we need the 800,000? We really had to go back to the data to say, what do we need? So in some of these really high need areas, it was a very workforce focused set of proposals. So automotive technology and repair, this is a great example. We said, how many jobs are there? So this is a huge field, right? 45,000 jobs in our area. Annual openings, more than 5,000. We're producing 91 a year, like not even close to what the demand is here. And so we were considering the smaller package, the $500 million, is add a couple of bays to an existing facility. 800,000 is, we need a whole new building to have a whole new location in a different part of the city that we're currently not serving well. So after going back to the data, we thought there's no question we need to go and build this whole new building in another part of the city that currently students don't have any access to this program. Another example that's kind of a point that's coming up right now, welding technology is a big one where there's a really big discrepancy. And this is a facilities constraint issue very specifically for us. And then we were able to take a look at students who are waitlisted. So not only is there big demand from the community, our students want to get in these programs, and the programs are just too small because we don't have the physical space. So this is the kind of thing that we were able to share, and the board ended up going with 770 million. So it was one of these where, you know, the fall, everyone was worried about inflation. We didn't know if this was the right time. It felt really risky to go for a big number. But we knew with the data behind us that this was really the right number to actually get what the students need and what the community needed. So that's one thing that I'll point out. The other thing that I will show are some dashboards. Are you seeing a dashboard now? Let me stop and share something. So we work closely with the Texas Workforce Commission to get the unemployment insurance wage records for the state. And so this is one of a couple of dashboards that we have where we're looking at the median wages of completers. So what you're seeing right now is for the whole college. And what you're seeing is 1 year after completion, 3 years after completion in the yellow, and then the teal is 5 years after completion. And so what's exciting about this is we can dig into, let's say, a particular area of study. If we just want to look at our health science students, we can take a look at them. We can actually get into and say, actually, we're really interested in nursing, and dig in again. One of the things that we were really excited to see is the earnings trajectory here. Students are making more than 50% more just 5 years out compared to where they start. So we really want to pay attention to programs where students are not making a lot of money coming in, but we realize it's not just about that first year. We really need to be thoughtful about what is the progression over time. And then I'll add one thing that is something. So one of the questions in the chat that I saw is like, what do you do if you don't have a high capacity? ACC is definitely a high capacity institution when it comes to research and data that's available. This kind of thing is available through some of the public resources that are out there. Either Texas Cruise or the Census Bureau has a really excellent resource, post-secondary education outcomes dashboard. We can certainly share that. I know TAC has been using that a lot. So if you can't create this kind of thing yourself, there are lots of good resources out there now. But the kind of thing that we can do in-house is get down to specific award levels, like even more detailed, and this kind of work where we can actually look by race, ethnicity, We want to take a look at the equity outcomes and also gender here, so we can start to slice and dice the data in more specific ways that help us understand how we're meeting our equity goals in addition to our upward mobility goals. So those are some of the ways that we're utilizing data to make sure we're connected to the workforce. If we see a program where there's lower levels of employment than we would expect, that triggers a review. What's going on in this program? Are we meeting the needs of the workforce here? Those kinds of questions and activities.
And just to put in a plug, Jenna, I know that Commissioner Keller and his team have been working very hard on dashboards for institutions of higher education across the state that are starting to be available this fall, that will help with some of that data that has been so hard for individual institutions in some areas to be able to generate themselves. So I know that we're very excited about that.
That's right. There's a lot coming. I think there, I saw in the chat, I'll drop the links in a minute. And so there are a couple that are already there. And then we are on the cusp, I think, of a lot more data access in this area.
That's exciting. Absolutely. So this is kind of in our wheelhouse, Gary, for a trustee who's charged with strategic planning and financial oversight rather than the day-to-day operations of the college. What does effective use of data look like in our role?
Well, I think from our standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, is that, we take the data and then say, okay, so now we have the data, now take that data and let's achieve the results that we expect from the administration. So whether that's, and I know from some of the information that was just presented, that Jenna presented, from the standpoint that in the health field, we found, of course, health workers are needed everywhere. And so one of the things that we've looked at the data and say, okay, we have this need. So, we've got a nursing program. So you've got LVN. So now while they're in that program, then we use the data and say, okay, now by doing this, you can become an RN. That increases their wages. So I think from a trustee standpoint that we take the data and say, okay, now we're doing this. Now what can we do to move forward? And by moving forward and increasing their abilities, their credentials, then it leaves opportunities for others to move in behind. And I think that's what, as trustees, what we need to give the resources to accomplish what's required in the workforce.
Awesome. Well, we're getting close to time today, and I definitely want to get to this question that deals directly with the 88th legislature, which has shown support for the recommendations from the Texas Commission on Community College Finance. I would say they've shown a lot of support. It includes transitioning to an outcomes-based funding model. So just think about that, outcomes-based funding model. How might the passage of related legislation change the perspective of trustees regarding the data they need?
Well, I think from our standpoint, I look at them as the opportunity to really increase the educational ability of the people you're serving. I think it goes to that point I mentioned earlier, is that if you just say, well, we're doing okay the way we are, then that's not acceptable. We need to move forward. And I think this, the funding that are looking at, that's what that's based on, is that, if you want to stay where you are, you're not really making progress. But if you're moving forward, achieving outcomes, achieving those type of things, training the workforce, then you're going to be rewarded for that. And I think that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah. Any other comments there, Susan or Jenna?
I think we are really excited, and all of the partners that we talk about and talk with at a community college level are very excited about this legislation. First, it's incredibly powerful. It not only is tied towards outcomes rather than just entry. Are we really achieving the objectives that we want to for our students in our communities? But it's also tied to equity, again, based on student populations, but also based on location. There's a lot of rural parts of the state, for instance, today, that have a lot less access to tuition and other resources to allow students to take the dual credit classes and other opportunities to really get a jump start on college. And then the last thing that I would say is that it is highly, highly probable. We are one of the groups across the state that has been pushing for this legislation, but remarkably, all 50 community colleges together have been pushing for this legislation. And it is highly likely that the great majority of it will pass and will have some great tools for our communities and our colleges going forward to help students be more successful.
All the hearings that have been held with the House and the Senate, I'm telling you, there aren't very many questions asked. It's almost like you're good. Y'all are done. Let's go on to the next group that needs to talk to us. And that's the feeling that we're getting about that legislation. What's nice too is that Texas, of course, is being looked at by the nation's community colleges for work that we're doing right now. And they're really waiting to see what the outcome will be. And I'm very anxious about this too. And it's a very exciting time.
Let me just add a couple of things. So even though we're shifting to an outcomes based, so completions, transfer, dual credit, reaching a certain credit threshold, number one, I think the equity components that Susan mentioned are really important. But within the college, folks are asking, well, does that mean enrollment's not important anymore? And it's no. You actually can't have a lot of completions if you don't have a robust enrollment funnel,
Exactly.
right? So you need to support students all throughout the continuum.
Yep.
And there, concerns about, are we being selective in who we're going to support? But I actually think it's being designed in a way that's going to encourage community colleges to serve as many students as possible, as robustly as possible. One plug I'll put in, I'm on a work group right now that's looking at what's going to count, right? Which completions. And one of the things that's being expanded when we talk about completions, in the past, the coordinating board has only acknowledged, or for success points and others, associate degrees and certificates level 1 and above. There's a lot that's offered at the occupational skills level or what's called an institutional award, often in the continuing education or non-credit space. So all of the colleges were asked to provide non-credit completion data for the first time in the last couple of weeks. And so this is going to be a little messy. I think this is very much new territory that we're going to have to figure out what's counted and how is it remunerated in terms of how much funding will go to it. So one thing as a board member is I would just recommend that now more than ever, clean data around your non-credit space. Are those students kind of treated and counted in exactly the same ways as your credit students are going to be really important considerations. And a lot of on the continuing education side, lots of times there are sort of courses that are offered, but they're not organized into awards, but it's going to be awards, not courses, that are going to be counted. So that's some of the work I think on the instructional side that your teams are going to be engaged in the next couple of months, as people try to kind of quickly clean up some of that information to make sure they're rewarded in the ways that are appropriate for the work that's being done.
Absolutely. Well, we've kind of run past the time for audience questions. Nicole, I know we've had a lot in the chat. Are there any questions that the audience has right now that we could answer?
Oh, thank you so much, Jay. I have been interacting in the chat and keeping track of the questions that are being sent in. I think if we can go ahead and move to closing announcements, we will certainly revisit many of these exciting insights that our panelists have mentioned today at future events.
Nicole, sorry to pull an audible here, but I did see one question that I was actually hoping someone would tackle is, how do you get people to care enough to actually go use this data? So that's a really important question.
It is.
I think that driving people again and again back to resources, or, I think prompting, we're here to check in on the strategic plan. Let's all go look at the dashboard. I mean, I think that you do need lots of opportunities to nudge people back to it. Because you're right, people are busy and it's hard to make sense of data on the fly. And so this is also the kind of thing that board retreats are really good for, to help make sure people are familiar with the tools, know how to access them, know how to interpret them, and have some time for sense making. It's hard to just look at a piece of data and immediately know, oh, this is what we're supposed to do with that. It often takes a couple of times and some thoughtful collaborative discussion to make sense of that.
Absolutely. And it's also helpful, Jenna, when we have people like you helping us. And we need to lean into you a lot. I want to thank our panelists today, Gary, Jenna, Susan. Y'all have done such an amazing job. That's why I kind of lost track of time, as I was not a moderator as much as I was an audience member, because I've learned so much today. Thank you very, very much for
Jay?
taking the time. Yes, Gary.
Can I just make one comment as we
Yes,
close?
please. Yeah.
I think that as trustees, that I think that what we need to take from this is that, you know, what we need to ask ourselves, what can my college do that we are not doing to have successful students? But then to follow that up is, what do we need to stop doing? I think that's really important. It's
Correct.
always, it's easy to move forward, but so many times say, well, we've always done that. What, as we say, times are changing. So what do we need to stop doing? And I think as trustees, that's what we need to look at.
Great point. The plane will not take off if we don't, take off some of the luggage that we've had, some of the baggage from the past.
That's right.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to close this out today. Today's webinar is the beginning of a new professional development series for Texas trustees that will highlight how to proactively access publicly available data dashboards, how to message the data, and how to utilize the data to make financial and policy decisions for the benefit of students. CCATT will continue the trustee leadership seminars later in 2023 and throughout 2024, with a special focus on best practices for data-informed governance as it relates to the regional workforce needs. These leadership seminars are open to any trustee from around the state, but will be located at colleges in each region to mitigate travel barriers. Also, we have some fun coming up at our annual conference. Please mark your calendars for September 14th through 16th, which is when we will all meet in Fort Worth, Texas, for the 2023 CCATT annual conference. I'm very, very excited about this year's conference. The theme for this year is Inspiring Innovation, Community College Governance for the Future. I love that title. I love what we're building in this. I think this is going to be the best conference we've ever had, honestly. The annual conference is CCATT's cornerstone event, which brings trustees, regents, presidents, and chancellors, conference sponsors, association leaders, and philanthropic organizations together to share important collaborations, policies, and practices, all aimed at improving community college governance, academic outcomes, and workforce opportunities. Please make sure to save that date. Nicole, is there anything else that we have left out or need to address?
I put a link in the chat about the annual membership survey. So CCATT surveys the trustees around the state to understand what your priorities are and how we can create professional development events that are meaningful to you. So those who are with us in the audience, if you could respond to that survey before April 5th, we would really appreciate your feedback.
Awesome. Well, again, Gary, Susan, Jenna, what a wonderful hour we've spent with you. It's a lot. It's the best lunch I've had all week. Thank y'all so much. And with that, we'll go ahead and close this session. Y'all have a great Friday.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Nicole, and all of you for being here.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoyed the meeting.
Thank you. Have a good Friday.
Bye-bye.